to pass out, to download, to distribute, right? It was that cultural intervention that concerned them enough that they pulled our funding. And we have never gotten that funding since, right? Fuck, doesn't matter. But it's important to understand that. And so I just want to add in this layer of, when we think of solidarity, it's all of these things we mentioned, but our cultural workers are vital to this conversation, right? Our cultural work is vital because they are using cultural work as well. That is it's a strategy that they understand, and it's a strategy that they fear and are solidarity for. Okay, I want to pass it to you there. Yeah? Nadia, either one. Nadia, why don't you do this thing? This mic is funny style. I feel like you can't hear it. Yeah. We're like, use a good mic. Thank you, Nadia.
Good mic for everyone.
Maybe it's not a good mic.
Hold it. There it is. No, that's all. That's all.
Never mind. Okay.
Use the bad.
I use the bad mic.
You should use good dad. That's what happened.
Yeah, it's a little echoey. I'm pretty loud. Okay. If I need to change, please let me know. Oh, come back. Okay. Well, it really is a privilege to be here, and it's extremely difficult, as it was 2 months ago, to talk about ourselves and our people back home. And it's also our responsibility. And so it's funny that you all bring up 2008, 2009 for a couple of reasons personally. The Palestinian Youth Movement Bay Area chapter, which was the first chapter founded in the so-called United States, was actually founded on the precipice of 2008, 2009. So December 2008, early 2009, because of Operation Cast Lead in Gaza. And actually, the rallies. No, I think I don't. The rallies from 2008, 2009 specifically around the murder and execution of Oscar Grant is the earliest memory that many of us have as PYM organizers here, other than trying to uplift what was happening in terms of the Israeli onslaught of Gaza. Central to, so I don't think it's a chance or a mistake. And those tanks still are there in front of their camps, right? The Polisario also host their governance in Algeria. And it's, in terms of Algeria, that the FLN, right, or the Algerian Liberation Movement in the 1950s, was the first movement who taught us as Palestinians how to fight. So when you see an ongoing prospect of guerrilla warfare, any sort of Palestinian resistance historically, contemporarily, we really thank the Algerians for supporting us in a moment when we didn't have power, we had very little to offer, and just like now, there's a big risk in supporting Palestine, right? And yet we do it anyways, because what's gained initially from supporting any of us that have lost struggles or lost causes, right? Which is a psychological intention to make us think that we're gonna lose on our moment of victory. I want to speak quickly, if I can, to the massacre that happened yesterday in Shujaiya. Have folks heard about that? Here's the thing about our struggle. We are so honored that people see us, understand us, and want to learn more about us. And we feel that folks are actually holding this collective grief, right? With a different proximity to it. Shujaiya, if we speak about 2008, 2009, there was a massacre in Shujaiya. This is the psychological operations of the Israeli military. There's the strategy and there's the psyops, right? Again, talking about the psychology of defeat. There was a massacre in Shujaiya where soldiers marched into Shujaiya, They shot over 200 people in the stomach in immediate length, and there were oral histories that were told just in Arabic. Mind you, we're getting much better at translating these things into English now, right? But in 2008, 2009, Israeli soldiers went into the homes of Shujaiya, of the people of Shujaiya, and they told mothers, they separated them from one side and they separated their kids on the other, and they told them, you have 10 kids, pick 5. Which ones do you want to live? And they killed their children in front of them. Methodologically, this is the story of Shujaiya. For those of us who can read Arabic, who can understand Arabic, there are multiple layers to every single video you're seeing, because we can hear in our dialect people suffering. And these are the stories of Shujaiya. In 2014, Shujaiya was targeted again. 1,500 people were killed in multiple airstrikes in Shujaiya 2 days ago. And that is part of the psychological ops that the Israeli military is participating in. We may not win this moment of liberation, but we, the Palestinian people, will be victorious. And it is exactly the type of repression that we see at this moment that is actually a sign of weakness. And it's the same historically. They've tried to repress us, they've killed our movement leaders, they've gone time and time again to try and imprison the bravest of us, the clearest of us, the most dignified. And yet, we are still here, and we are relentless. And that is the legacy that we come from. So for joint struggle and thinking of what the future of solidarity holds, just to really reaffirm, not only did the murder of Oscar Grant really helped revolutionize me as a Bay Area kid who saw myself and see myself in him, but it also continues to grow. These things have roots and they have futures. The last thing I'll say is, do folks remember the murder of Iyad Halak in Jerusalem? He has cousins here in the Bay. So Uncle Bobby X, when the murder of Iyad happened, where he was shot in the back running away, 2011, I think. Anyways, I'll remember the exact date. Uncle Bobby X,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. That's Oscar Grant's uncle.
Yeah.
Great. He joined us in a conversation with the family of Iyad Halak and spoke to how bereaved family circles kind of operate here. And I believe that inspiration for the new formations coming up here to support families who have been impacted by police violence based on the prototype that we have in Palestine. Because so many of our people are murdered, like here. So many of our people are imprisoned, like here. That we have grassroots networks and community formations in order to pertain to the resiliency of these communities who are being targeted, right? We're being killed in Jerusalem because they want us to leave. We're being killed in 48 because they want us to leave, right? And so being able to take up the question of grief as a collective one, being able to take up our struggle in the question of a collective one, that's part of what has given us as Palestinians strength. The carceral system in Israel, the same as here, is intended to individualize us and separate us. So it's of the utmost importance that we maintain that character so that even as we're seeing 22,000 Palestinians die and many more who will pay the ultimate price with their life, and we have 10,000 people in prison, there's still one of us, two of us, three of us, four of us. We still remain and we will still fight like hell. Because we have said there's no peace without justice and there's no justice without return, period.
Okay, I I know we're spending a lot of time on this question, but it's an important question, and I want to bring you, Sarah, into the conversation. I want you, if you could talk about what Jewish participation has looked like historically, what it looks like now, particularly the role of Zionism within Jewish progressive movements, within Jewish organizing, and how it's used to attack progressive. And then, you know, the solidarity pieces that we did.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think I want to start with your question of lineage.
Yeah.
And in every moment, we have a choice which lineages we choose to stand on and take forward, and which we decide to diverge from. And, you know, hearing your story of Palestinian mothers being asked which of her kids should live, were the stories, thank you, that my great-grandparents and grandparents told about the Nazi genocide when people were forced to make similar choices. And so as Jewish people, the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network was founded on the idea that it is itself a form of anti-Semitism, that Zionism has deep in its roots, to take that history and use it against other people in the way that it was used against us. And so the confrontation of Zionism is actually part of the confrontation of anti-Semitism, and we stand on the history of Jewish people who fought against our own persecution, but also were part of collective liberation struggles. But there are also lineages of Jewish history in which Jewish people participated with the ruling elite, with empire, thinking somehow it was going to protect us, when in fact it was just part of being used against other people, but also ultimately against ourselves. And Israel is just the state version of that history. So when we were building the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network right after the Second Intifada, and we went around the world, we went to Palestine, we went to Lebanon, we spoke to our comrades here and MXGM, we spoke to South Africans, and we just said, is there a usefulness of an international, speaking of internationalism, anti-Zionist Jewish force to confront Zionism as an international mechanism that is used to advance white supremacy, apartheid, and Israel itself has an economy based on the repression industry that, like this country does with people of color and indigenous people and immigrants, they develop that technology on Palestinians, and on the Israeli website say that they practice it in real time. That's their marketing strategy. And when we talk to people, particularly people in Palestine, they said, yes, we need an international anti-Zionist force to combat Zionism, but it's not, initially we were called the International Jewish Solidarity Network, and they challenged us, a lot of Palestinians, and they said, we don't really need Jewish solidarity to fight our struggle. We don't need that from you. We have international solidarity all over the world. We do need you to be part of a left collective liberation struggle against these forces of history that have targeted Jewish people for so long and that now you're participating in. You have to take that history back and fight it for your own selves and history, as well as to be in solidarity with not only the Palestinian struggles, but the struggles in the places that we live. And because Zionism, it's not just ideological, as everyone said and as Kat said. We share common enemies. And so the Israeli military trains police forces all over the world, but also arms, provides strategy to undermine people's liberation struggles all over the world, and they usually do it in collaboration with the United States. Israel creates 60% of the world's drones. Drones, sorry. Drones. And that technology, as we know, is used against populations all over the world. As Kat said, population control is one of the specialties, but it's also used to repress people's movements. And then what we'll talk about a little later is organizations like the Jewish Community Relations Council are part of networks that are not only attacking the Palestinian struggle, of course that's their first and foremost priority, but the people who fund backlash against the Palestinian struggle are funding backlash against all of our struggles, right? And the organizations like the Anti-Defamation League, which how many people here have heard of the Anti-Defamation League? Yes. Stop the Anti-Defamation League. The Anti-Defamation League, like the Jewish Community Relations Council, fronts as a Jewish organization. The Anti-Defamation League in particular has marketed itself as an anti-hate organization. As many people in this room know, they are one of the chief vehicles for not only defending Israel, but Islamophobia. And in the 1990s, during the anti-apartheid struggle, they understood, like Manisha said, they understand how powerful joint struggle is. So they hired a South African agent to spy on 1,000 social justice organizations. This is a very famous case. A lawyer here, Mark Vanderhout, tried that case and won. The Anti-Defamation League hired this South African agent to spy on organizations, particularly around anti-apartheid, but also the farm workers' struggle. Literally 1,000 organizations. Why did they do that? Because they understood that the success of those movements directly gave power to the Palestinian struggle, and the Palestinian struggle gives power to all of our movements for justice. And so their objective is to divide us and separate us. I will tell one more story. Malcolm X Grassroots, IJAN, and actually the Palestinian Youth Movement were in Geneva at the World Conference on Racism. And this was after Durban. And in Durban, the United States refused to participate in Durban, saying it was because of this equation, Zionism equals racism. What else were they bringing to Durban? They were bringing a resolution for reparations for slavery in the United States. The United States used Palestine to prevent having to be accountable and give due reparations to people in the United States. And then they blamed the Palestinian struggle for dividing and not giving black people what they deserve. They set the whole thing up. And so together we are literally stronger, but also we play into their hands when we're not together. And so our work, and so then in Geneva, they tried to do the same thing, right? And we came together and had a counter conference, and it's been a long time coming, but the fact that organizations like JCRC have to name that they are Zionist. At the Oakland resolution, they kept saying, we are Zionist. They never had to do that. They always got to cover up their ideology and the racism behind it. It is our victory that they have to say it. It's our victory that they're criminalizing anti-Zionism. And it's our job to make sure that people understand how central anti-Zionism is to anti-racism, not just ideologically, but practically. And so I will pause there.
Is this working as well? Yeah? In the back? Okay. I hope y'all are taking notes, because this is, that was the first question. That was the first question. So I will do better as a moderator, but I didn't want to, this history is so important, right? Because why do we need to understand our history?
So we can organize adequately right now.
Right, because we are learning in this moment. And so I want to move us into current conditions. Actually, Sarah, you set us up brilliantly in talking about the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, the JCRC. So I want to do a couple things. I want us to kind of quickly break down what are we facing? What's different about what we're facing in this moment than these past moments that you all have so brilliantly articulated?
Lawsuit against Rabab Abdelhadi, right, professor at San Francisco State University, where they used our case as precedence, even though they lost it. So, Canary Mission, have folks heard of Canary Mission? We don't know 100% who funds it. Oh, Canary Mission, the blacklist that the first profiles were at UC Santa Cruz, us as students on campus, in order to deem us as anti-Semites. They would put up a profile of you. Please do not go visit the website and give them more traffic. But they put up your picture, they put up erroneous information about you, things that you may or may not have said on Twitter. They connect you to as many different radical Palestinian factions as they can find. Really, like today in the news, not understanding the difference between Hamas and Al-Qaeda and ISIS at all, because we're all the same, right? And then at its inception would actually call jobs or universities, places where we were as students, and say, hello, we are Canary Mission. We have this website where we've profiled this person who you are going to hire, who's a student at your university. Did you know that they are a raging anti-Semite? So this has been the perpetual history of doxing, right? Also of repression, things that we saw from McCarthy era, Vietnam War, right? Here we are today. So the JCRC, we do know, is one of the primary funders of Canary Mission. They are located here. So what's different about this moment is that they're having to change their strategy because Palestine isn't just a struggle or an event that people know about now, right? Or knew about before, maybe. It's popularized. People know Palestine. And unfortunately for them, the majority of us who are 35 and under are pro-Palestine, right? Vehemently.
That's right.
So the youth are all right. We're just fine. Also, we can see in the polls that POC, or people of color in the United States, are vehemently pro-Palestine. And we can see that 80% of Democratic voters and 55% of Republican voters are pro-Palestine, or at least pro-ceasefire. Now, what does that mean in terms of who is Zionist? For the JCRC and the ADL, who have been trying to say, we're progressive, we're multiracial, we form these different types of coalitions that represent all different types of people, they're left with the old white folks. Doesn't look good. And you can see that in terms of the rally, the pro-Israel rally that was in Washington, D.C. They had a bunch of supremacists on the stand and then Van Jones. Who did we have? We had people coming who we didn't even ask them to speak because we didn't want to put people out. Folks were coming by the numbers in order to offer their solidarity. And we had over 500,000. What did they have, 100,000? So the JCRC and the Zionist lobby has to change their strategy because they're being revealed as the conservatives that they are. And they're being revealed as the racists that they are. And we're also at this moment needing to, I think, expand our strategy in terms of long-term, short-term effectiveness, long-term planning, because a movement that makes it through this moment is the one that's gonna be stronger, right? That's our goal, to not get caught up in the immediacy.
Yeah.
And I think fundamentally, we have to change our strategy. It's the first time that I'm hearing not just Islamophobia, but also anti-Palestinian racism, right? Because not all of us are Muslim. And we are being targeted not just because of war on terror and because we are all culturally Muslim, okay, and that's our region, but also because we are Palestinian, we're Palestinian. And so I'll pass it to Sarah in a second, but really it's a core understanding that we as Palestinian people, no matter where we are, whether we're quiet, whether we're loud, whether we're organizing, whether we're in hiding, Zionism is going to come for us because we represent the future of our struggle. So long as we exist and we're able to understand who we are, we're able to understand and organize around our central political demands, right? Not just the right to clean water and food and freedom of movement, which all human beings should have, but our political rights as Palestinian people, the things that unite us, that we cannot barter or sell, right? Freedom for Palestine, from the river to the sea, liberation of our homeland, generation after generation until total liberation. The freedom for all political prisoners, the freedom, the self-determination of our people, right? And the return of all refugees. So those are our central political demands. I didn't decide that. The PLO decided that. And the Palestinian Authority, as much as they might try, cannot barter that away. And so that's why Zionism is coming for us, because they want to eradicate the issue and they haven't figured out how to kill all of us or how to kill our spirit, even in Gaza. So I'll pass it to you just in terms of continuing this idea. How do we actually shift our strategy and what's different? I think what's different is that we're stronger than ever before. And because we're being more effective, we know the state doesn't rest. Their attempts of different forms of repression are going to continue. But there's a lot more of us than there are of them.
So I think just building off of that, one of the things that's different is that we can actually have this fight on explicit terms. And like you said, JCRC, the Jewish Community Relations Council, has 125 chapters across the United States. And they claim to represent all Jewish people. They increasingly represent fewer and fewer Jewish people. The majority of young Jewish people don't identify with the state of Israel in almost any polls that you do, which doesn't mean that there aren't young Zionists on campus who are documenting their fellow students and faculty and reporting to Canary Mission. But one of the things we're seeing right now is for a long time, we named ourselves the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network 20 years ago as a speech act to be able to return to what in the 1960s was the Zionism equals racism equation, anti-Zionism equals anti-racism, not anti-Semitism. That was the Oslo process really tried to eliminate the anti-Zionist spectrum and goals of the Palestinian liberation struggle. And so now they are explicitly revealing themselves as virulent racists. They're not even trying to cover it up. They're naming themselves as Zionists, and so we can actually have the fight on anti-Zionist terms. Like you would have a fight on anti-racist terms. You know, we're not non-racist, we're anti-racist. And so I think that's a real opportunity, and I think the way that PYM and AROC and the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network and Jewish Voice for Peace and hopefully all of us are able to just call out organizations like JCRC for the racists they are and work together to exclude the Jewish Community Relations Council for coalitions they try to join, like every Martin Luther King Day, they host events with black churches. That's offensive, right? That's offensive to the black liberation struggle. It is offensive when they're part of anti-Asian hate coalitions, when they are the biggest spreaders of hate against Southwest Asian, North African people. So we have to do that work. And I would say as Jewish people, what we're asking, particularly of non-Jewish people, is take on those organizations. Don't allow them into your spaces and our spaces. And you need us to do that maybe because of the way they come after us, but we really do need to work together on that, and we need to broaden the platform of people. And you have the voices of many Jewish people saying, if you want to actually not participate in anti-Semitism, you have to combat Zionism. Zionists have collaborated and continue to collaborate with the biggest anti-Semites, and we can't get back into history, but they courted the Nazis, they courted the Tsar of Russia. That's what they do. And now they're working with the Christian Zionists who fund more, they send more money to Israel than any of the rest of us combined, including Jewish Zionists. And their goal is to get